Hi, everyone. So I'm here with our author, Sainath. Sainath, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start off with an introduction to the book and a small introduction to Sainath. And then I'm going to get started and actually talking to Sainath. So the newest in the Tulika Graphix series, Unknown Heroes of India's Freedom Struggle, is a unique collection of graphic narratives. Adapted from award-winning journalist P.Sainath's meticulously collected chronicles, it honors independent India's forgotten and unknown foot soldiers to whom we owe so much. Brought to life by the distinctive visual styles of 16 brilliant illustrators, these stories of our freedom struggle speak to us even today. They give us things to learn from, to hold on to take forward as we continue to celebrate our diversity while striving to become a more inclusive India. A little bit about Sainath now. Sainath is the founder editor of People's Archive of Rural India, or PARI. He has been a journalist and a reporter for 42 years now and has been covering rural India full-time for 30 of those years. Sainath has won over 60 national and international awards and fellowships. He has been teaching journalism at the Sophia Polytechnic in Mumbai for 3 decades and at the Asian College of Journalism in Chennai since 2000. In December 2014, Sainath launched PARI, a digital journal and a living archive. Publishing in 14 languages, PARI's mandate is to cover every region and section of rural India. In true Sainath styles, all the stories that you'll see in this graphic novel hold the voice of the protagonists of our heroes at the center, recalling for today's generations their ideals, their daring, their passion, and their many, many contributions. Sainath, it is so wonderful to get to see you again, and I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to speak with you about this graphic adaptation of your book, The Last Heroes, Foot Soldiers of India's Freedom. So I'll get started off with my first question, Sainath. Your stories are typically told in words, in photos, in videos, and non-fiction books are not too many of those that we've seen in a graphic format. And especially something that's been done with younger readers in mind, something that's been done with a slightly different audience in mind in terms of people who would be willing to engage with this, even if they're not fully aware of, say, English and want to go through like big paragraphs filled with words, breaking it down in this graphic format. My question to you was, what do you think about this visual adaptation and this storytelling format for your book and for your stories?
I love it. I think it's fantastic. And as you said, it's done by 16 different illustrators, each telling one story. And I think the quality across those 16 is absolutely brilliant. I note that many of them have also tried visualizing the protagonist, most of whom spoke to me in their 80s and 90s mainly, trying to visualize the protagonists as they might have been at 16 and 20, and then age them over the story, like you see with Hassa by Patel or with Saliha. And I think that was absolutely well done and brilliant. And when they come to the contemporary time of these of the heroes in the book, the authenticity and the capture of that person of a Hausabai or a Malu Swarajim is awe-inspiring. It's done so well. Yeah, I love it. And I love the idea of the entire format as well, because it really is, it's really going to draw in readers who would not read a full book of 275 pages. So that's good. I mean, I think I've answered that question.
You have beautifully. Thank you. Next is, so, some of these stories, you'd mentioned some of them as well. And if I remember correctly, some of these stories, like the ones about Baji Muhammad, Salihan, and the entire village of Panimora, were first printed as articles in the Hindu and the Times of India. And then we republished them on the Pari website, where we included even more stories of freedom, like, some of the unsung heroes, freedom fighters, like Babani Mahato, Hassa Bai, who you mentioned, and N. Sankaraya. So why do you document these stories, Sainath? And why is it so important for us? Because I know you've spoken about this before, and I'd love for you to share this with our audience. Why is it so important for us to pass this on to the next generations?
Well, one thing I'd like to tell you straight away, where I am now and why, and it connects to your question. I am in a town called Jaipur, Jeypore, in Koraput, in Odisha. The maximum number of characters in the book are from Odisha. Salihan, Lakshmi Panda, Baji Muhammad, and the entire village of Panimora. And I'm here visiting the families of these freedom fighters to give them copies of the book in person in their villages. This morning, I had a meeting with the son of Lakshmi Panda and the nephew of Baji Muhammad. And in fact, the media showed up big time, and it's in Odisha, in Koraput. And I went to the Bonda Hills as well. And tomorrow onwards, I'll be doing Kalahandi, Bargad, going to Salihan's home village and her married village. So that's why I'm actually in Odisha, just for them. That tells you, I think, how important it is to me. Why is it important to my readers, to those who are going to be looking at the book? See, this book is done for two reasons. One is for the people in it. Their stories deserve to be told. And for the rest of us, the post-1947 generations, we need their stories in order to better script our own, to better shape our own stories. We need to know who these people were, because a nation or a generation or even a nation that doesn't know where it came from has no clue where it's going. Okay.
So true.
So that, I think, is two of the very important reasons. Third, I wrote this for young people because I'm looking in meeting after meeting, and I speak a lot in colleges and universities, and I'm looking at a generation that has been robbed of its history. And I have to say up front, my generation did the robbing. The textbooks we wrote, and there were some fantastic textbooks that we wrote, like the ones by Romila Thapar or S. Gopal or K. N. Panikkar or Harbans Mukhya. And those have been savaged, and just, kids of the present generation don't even know of them. But further, we need to figure out what our freedom struggle was about, and who were the people who brought your nation to independence. Now, commonly, the textbooks young people read, the books adults read, focus, and the number of biographies you see, focus on five, six, half a dozen people at the most, and tell you they brought you or make you understand that they brought you independence. A Gandhi, a Nehru, an Ambedkar, whoever. That sort of imposes a great man theory of history. That individuals, heroic individuals, brought you independence. Now, it's very interesting that most of the great men completely disagree with that. Gandhi repeatedly says, you can see it sprinkled across his collected works. We were the face. We were not the people who actually created that revolution. We were their lawyers, their advocates, the face. But it was ordinary people, ordinary men and women who brought you independence. In one line, he says, which I place as the first line to the introduction in the main book, great men seem to be the cause of revolutions. In truth, it is the people themselves who are the cause. The great legendary Bhagat Singh said the same thing differently. He said, we revolutionaries are the gems on the edifice. The foundation was not laid by us. That was by the suffering and the struggles of the ordinary people. And this book is about those ordinary people who collectively, cumulatively, their efforts brought us to independence, as acknowledged by a Gandhi, as acknowledged by a Bhagat Singh. Now, after independence, some, like members of my family, benefited from their role in the struggle. These were usually upper caste, better educated people, from upper middle classes. So, that's what, say, my relatives were. But my granddad, who was one of those who benefited, kept saying what Gandhi did, what Bhagat Singh did, that it wasn't our success. It was the success of the struggles of the Indian masses. So the book looks at those ordinary people. It looks at farmers, laborers, homemakers, what we used to call housewives, homemakers, and couriers and cooks. Lakshmi Panda worked in the kitchens of the INA. Couriers and cooks and carpenters and, landless laborers. Only one of them ever went to a college and completed his studies, H.S. Doreswamy, the mischievous man from Mysore. And by the way, he was the only journalist of the lot. So the next thing is, people have got a horribly skewered idea because of the kind of propaganda they're subjected to for the last 15, 20 years about the nature of that struggle. It was actually incredibly widespread. People from every religion and caste group participated in it. Not people from every political stream, I'm afraid, but from most political streams. And the book also therefore has Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, it has atheists, non-believers, it has Dalits, Adivasis, Brahmins, OBCs, and it has 5 women in 15 chapters, which is very unusual because I think it's a big gaping hole in the books on the freedom struggle, except those books which are only about women freedom fighters. like Parvati Menon's excellent book on a dozen women freedom fighters. But I think they rank up there along on par with, maybe superior to, many of the men who fought in the struggle. And that's why we have 5 incredible, to my own prejudice and bias, I think the women in the book are more interesting. I mean, more spectacularly alive. And consider that I'm saying that when I say that the men are brilliantly alive, but the women seem to be just a little more fascinating than them.
And
So
almost in
this, I mean,
sorry, Sainath, I'll let you
no,
finish.
no, go ahead.
And I was
No,
just,
that
it's like it is a thought that you
okay.
brought up.
I'm sorry, just
Yes.
one other thing. You
Yeah.
asked me why now, and that is in 5 years' time, Aditi, not a single freedom fighter who brought your country to independence is going to be alive. The youngest person alive in the book now, the youngest in the book was Mallu Swarajam at 92, 93. Since the pandemic period, 8 have died, 7 are alive, and the youngest is 98 and the oldest is 105. In 5 years' time, there's going to be nobody left alive, and we have lost our golden generation. Youngsters, people of your generation and younger, will never get to see, talk to, touch, engage with, listen to, just be in the presence of someone who actually fought for your country's freedom and helped bring down the mightiest empire in history. That is something why it is so important to document them.
Very true. And thank you. Thank you for doing this, because it does bring us a little closer, like you said, to our reality in some way, getting to look back with you and, through their own words, because like so many of your stories do, we get to hear the protagonists in the ways that they would have wanted to be heard, instead of this exoticized sort of version of them that people might feel the need to put out since it's getting printed or it's getting published. But just the ways in which they are authentic itself, like you said, is so brilliant that it's really a privilege to be able to get to read their words through your pen. The reason I was trying to interrupt you earlier was because, the thing that you mentioned about the women in the book, and something that I noticed in almost all the stories about the women in the book was how much they tended to downplay themselves, right, Sainath? Like they would, some of them even asked, like, they were like, I'm not a freedom fighter, and why are you, like, or they would differ, or yeah, that you could see how even for them, just the fact, some of them were of course proud of it. They wanted to be at the forefront of it. Lakshmi Panda knew what she was worth, but I don't think society allowed her to feel that way. But then there were others in the book who were like not Hassa Bai Patil, Babani Mahato, for instance, was quite insistent that she was not the hero that you might have.
Yeah. Even Hassa Bai kept saying, I did some small things during the freedom struggle. Nothing great. I think what she did was phenomenal. But yeah, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to hear you a little more about these women, because they seriously were amazing, and it's so good to get to read about this.
Take the case of Mallu Swarajam.
Yes.
Mallu Swarajam at age 84, I introduced her to an audience of 1,500 techies in Hyderabad and was interviewing her and asking her how she fought the Razakars in the Telangana uprising, first with a slingshot, later with a rifle. And I asked her, is the slingshot really a worthy, I mean, it's a good weapon in hunting, but is it a worthy weapon in human combat? She got mad. She stood up at 84, ramrod straight, plucked out a slingshot and started swinging it about with a cricket ball, saw terrified faces in the audience, removed the cricket ball, kept it aside, and said, I don't want to hurt any of you. And this is how. And she beautifully, powerfully, and elegantly demonstrated the use of that leather slingshot. And you could really imagine someone's helmet cracking open in the special police who were sent after them. So that was Malu Swarajya. She, by the way, had never any doubt that she was a great freedom fighter, but she kept saying, we didn't make the masses into fighters. Their struggles and fights, they made us leaders. They made leaders of us. They came and told us that you can do something. And that again, that humility and, putting it down there. She was not a humble person, but on this, she was absolutely humble. Then, she had incredible escapades all over the place. And at one time, she was originally from a landlord's family, and she knew how to ride a horse. And she rode a horse into some of these battles, and the legend grew around her, calling her Jhansi Amma, after the Rani of Jhansi, Jhansi Amma, and things like that she was known as. And she said we very consciously exploited that because anything that struck fear in the enemy. So Hassa Bai is, a simply crazily funny and risky story. She's being beaten up by her husband in front of a police station. The police don't come out to help her. She's being beaten very badly, and the husband picks up a little rock and says, I'm going to smash your head. Then the police come out because, my husband beating wife, great national sport in this country. What's wrong with that? But murdering her on the doorstep of the police, it means the cops are going to have some uncomfortable questions later. So they come out, separate the couple, talk to them, reconcile them, are fed up with them, finally put them on a train back to their village, and come back to find that Hassa Bai and her husband, who was not her husband, but a comrade in the revolutionary underground, while they were engaging the police, their comrades in the revolutionary underground had looted the police station of all the weapons, ammunition, whatever they wanted to take, they took. And that whole beating up and abuse was a drama staged to deceive the police.
Oh my God.
And they did that more than once in different places. Babani Mahato, who kept telling me, actually, she disappointed me greatly. I'd gone a huge distance, believe me, to meet her. And she kept saying, I'm not a freedom fighter. You're 20 years late. You should have spoken to my husband, Baidyanath. He went to jail because everybody has got this idea from official mythology or theology that freedom fighters are those who went to jail. That sort of rules out most underground revolutionaries who didn't go to jail. They just died in the fights with the British. So she kept saying, you're 20 years late. Baidyanath died 20 years ago. He went 13 months to prison. And I asked her, oh, then it must have been quite hard on you when your husband went to jail for 13 months. She said, no, it was much worse when he came back because he brought more of his friends for me to feed. I was feeding a family of 25, joint family, and I grew the food, I cooked the food, and I was also feeding, sometimes for 1 month, 2 months, his friends. And who were those friends? They were the underground, revolutionary underground, hiding in the forests of Purulia. And this little girl of that time, very young woman of that time, was every day for a month, 2 months, at the height of the Bengal famine, procuring food, cooking food for the revolutionaries in the forest, which I think is a damn sight more dangerous, more risky, more heroic than going 13 months to jail. Yeah. So, I mean, these are the kind of women. Saliha also shows you that the unbelievable courage of your Adivasis who have fought the first Adivasis in this country, which something the book will tell our readers. They were the first to die for freedom, the last to benefit from it. While the rest of the country was having the salt satyagraha, in the landlocked areas, there was a forest satyagraha. And her father, Kartik Sabar, was one of the
leaders,
organizers. One day, then the police and the British force and their paramilitary and everything cracked down, armed force cracked down on the villages of Kariyar, Novapada, killed lots of people, and attacked Salihan's village in search of Kartik Sabar. Her name actually was Deimati Dei Sabar, from a very poor tribe called Sabar. So then these police, then someone ran from the village to the forest where the women were working. They did very little agriculture. They were essentially hunter-gatherers and a little bit of agriculture. And told Saliha, your father is shot, he's lying on the street. She raced back with 40 other women behind her and arrived to find their godowns on fire, the grain being looted, and her father lying on the street, his thigh oozing blood from a bullet wound. And these were armed people. The chief of that squadron had a revolver, the others had rifles. Salihan charged with a lathi. She would have been 15 or 16. She was an unmarried girl in her own village, so she couldn't have been more than that. She attacked the man with the gun, whereupon the other 40 Adivasi girls attacked the rest of the raiding party and beat them up and drove them out of the village. It's known in history as the uprising of Saliha. That was the name of her village when she got married and went to another village, Purena. There she was known as Salihan, the one who is from Saliha.
Okay.
And tomorrow in the afternoon, I'll be at both those villages, giving them the book and what it says about Saliha.
So beautiful, Sainath.
In her village now, there is a pillar commemorating the names of those who participated in the uprising of Saliha, and her name is not there. Neither is her father's name, because they're poor tribals. Names have appeared there, which I do not believe those communities existed in that village when it was in deep jungle. Okay? So the woman who led the fearless struggle, and then, by the way, once local government in Odisha gave her a certificate, a letter of honor, which praised her for being Kartik Sabar's daughter, and also said that her achievement was she has given birth to 3 sons. She also gave the birth to 3 daughters whom she loved. But that doesn't. And this is how women were marginalized in our history in the struggles for independence and freedom.
And so she had that at that point of time, and I'm sure now as well, that double burden of being not just a woman, but also a tribal woman. So it like marginalized the point of, like you said, right, non-existence. Her name is not there where it should be. Certificates that were issued to her had her father's names, her son's
That's right.
names. Slowly to like just back to our readers, Sainath. Do you think this book would work well in a classroom type or a educational setting? Because I imagine like I would have loved to see a book like this in my school library. So I'm just curious to know what you think. And
I absolutely believe it will work brilliantly, because I also have to say, I wrote it with that generation in mind. I wrote it with young people in mind. I wrote it for young people who are, not going to read a book of 274 pages, but can look at a comic or a graphic adaptation of it. I think they will love it. It's only been out a few days, and we are getting rave feedback on it, from those who have actually seen it and did it. That feedback is fantastic. And I think also the thing is, in that, if it's used as a book, and I was drawing on my earlier experience of my last book, Everybody Loves a Good Drought, which I wrote as a reporter, which became a textbook all on its own. So I tried learning something from that, length, length of stories, keeping them short, reflecting, which I do as a reporter anyway, but I think is very important with young people, reflecting in the bleakest of the situations, reflecting the humor of the protagonists, the fun with which they talk about something. Hassa Bai, I ask her, what is your most enduring memory of that escapade at the police station? She says, oh, that comrade of mine, he beat me too hard. I said, didn't you tell him to stop it? She said, I was screaming at him to not hit me so hard. And he was saying, it has to look authentic, only then the police will come out of the station. And she was laughing and telling us this at 92. Yeah, she was laughing. All of them had stories where they were laughing about the danger. Not that they were not scared. They were scared, but they also recognized the ridiculousness of the situation in many, many cases. Yeah, so I think the humor part of it, the humor in some of those stories is going to hold the attention and draw the interest of young people in classrooms. I really also can tell you this, that a couple of young mothers, also mothers in their 30s, late 20s, 30s, have sat and begun reading out this to kids, and they love it. So I'm absolutely sure.
And you speak of the humor, Sainath, and you've written about just how gentle so many of these freedom fighters were. People who were burning down dark bungalows and who were pelting stones at trains in order. And all of this was mostly, the what do you say, at the people in power and the people who are being oppressive and, you know, fighting against them, but as souls themselves, they were so gentle, and it comes out so beautifully through your books. And it's given that we're talking about this humor and this gentleness and all these aspects that you might not think of when you think of these fierce heroes, these freedom fighters who've got us our independence, and are allowing us to continue to work towards getting for one of the things they fought for, our freedom. Is there something that you would like us to hold in our hearts as we read our book, or even hold on to after we are done reading the books?
One thing I think that I would like everybody to know what they said, and it's important in light of what we just discussed. Every one of the figures in this book, every one of these heroes makes a clear distinction between independence and freedom. Independence was throwing out the British and creating a nation state based on citizens' rights. We did that. Freedom, they all say, is a much larger project. You know, in the main book, the first line of that main of the book itself is Captain Bow, who attacked the train, saying, "We fought for two things. We fought for freedom and independence. We achieved independence." I think it really should make all of us think about the meaning of freedom. And for them, it's very clear from, even if they were illiterate, many of the things they were describing as freedom are there in your constitution, in the directive principles of state policy, in the preamble to the constitution. And I think that the lesson is for us to take the Indian constitution much more seriously as the finest essence and distillation of the idealism of India's freedom struggle.
Sainath, thank you so very much for patiently answering all my questions and for giving us this gorgeous, beautiful book to adapt and to read. I'm completely looking forward to, I don't know how many times I've already gone through my copy right now, but I can't stop turning these pages, and I'm continuing to a few more readings of them, and looking forward to getting to hopefully see you, speak with you again. But until then, I will let you go. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Aditi. A pleasure.